Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. McIntire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for our financial and retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Chris McIntire, once again with us. Chris, welcome back in.
Hey, good morning, Peter. Good to be with you there, guys.
Always a pleasure, Chris. We appreciate the time, the guidance that you provide to the savers and investors across Northwestern Ohio who are planning, who are taking their financial future seriously. And Chris, again, we talked about it a little bit last week, but it's an easy time of year to procrastinate, to put things off. It seems stressful, but there are some ways that we can sort of de-stress the holidays and de-stress the financial implications of looking toward our future.
Sure is, Peter. And thankfully we've got some good news here on vaccine fronts and whatnot. So, maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel for folks, but it's obviously been a stressful couple of months here around the election, spike in COVID cases. What does the impact it's had on holidays, kids in school and whatnot. And, right now we just know so many more folks that have been, exposed or tested positive for the virus. So, for us, I'm 55 and, I got parents and a father-in-law that we're trying to keep them from going to stores and whatnot. And, they want to be able to do, a limited time left on the planet Earth, you would say. And so they want to, they don't want to just shut themselves in their home and give up another year of life. And I get that, but it is stressful for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And add on to that, the stress of the regular holiday routine and last minute shopping and staying in budget. And Chris, it can all be a little overwhelming here, especially with the additional stress of the pandemic thrown upon us. So we wanted to talk a little bit about de-stressing, about planning during a pandemic. What do we need to think about? But I think setting boundaries on our schedule and our spending, avoiding the family conflict and the discussions of politics, maybe around the holiday table, focusing on what we can control, knowing our roles in certain situations, if we're visiting relatives or friends, if we get to, knowing when to say no on holiday spending, limiting time on social media, envisioning the Christmas that we always wanted to have and then making it happen. And that's sort of the same thing with our financial future as well, Chris. We've really got to plan that and envision it in order to take the steps to actually implement and make it happen. And that's part of the planning process there at McIntire Retirement Services. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions, if you've got concerns, if you'd like to de-stress the planning process for your retirement and make sure that you're covering all of the items that you need to, pick up the phone, give them a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. But Chris, you've talked about it a bunch. One of the best things that we can do to actually have less stress during the holidays and after, similarly, as we are planning for retirement, one of the best things that we can do during that transition period is look at, carefully examine, and understand, and then try to stick to a budget.
Absolutely, Peter. Probably priority number one there is, know what kind of money is coming in, know what kind of money you have to spend. And it's one of the first things that we do when we talk with folks that call in from the radio show or attend some of our educational events is, what does it cost you to get through a month on for your basic living expenses? And it is shocking as how many people do not know what that number is, Peter.
Yeah. And so, Chris, as we enter into retirement, I think that for a lot of Americans who have been lucky enough to be fairly well off, earn a reasonable income, maybe they have not paid as much attention to the budget, pinching every penny, stretching every dollar. But for those same individuals, Chris, the change in income once they do retire is going to be that much more significant, and the reliance, the requirements from their portfolio for replacing that income is going to be that much higher, and therefore they really need to have a very specific and carefully thought through plan in order to accomplish that.
Well, and especially when you consider that most folks in their first few years of retirement are going to spend more money, so it's not like, hey, I'm in retirement now, I can coast, we're not going to spend anything. Most folks are going to want to spend time in Florida or, a warmer climate than Ohio. That costs money to rent a place for 3 or 4 months. You're going to do some traveling and some, you might have to pay for your own health insurance until you hit 65 and you get on Medicare, and that's a significant expense there. So when we do our retirement plans, we have some nice software, obviously, as we always factor in that, those extra expenses in that first 5 years of retirement, add a nice little inflation piece in there, and then underscore the potential rate of return on the investment portfolio, because if it works, underperforming what you think you might be able to do, then the rest, anything above that makes life easier and less stressful, and who wouldn't want that?
Well, and Chris, you brought along some tips about planning during a pandemic, or rather items to be mindful of as we are planning in the midst of the pandemic. And one of them that you wanted to discuss was exceedingly low yields and interest rates. Now, this is making it more difficult for savers and investors today, and a lot of times, as a result, pushing those savers and investors, even those that have been more conservative by nature, into higher and higher levels of risk.
Of course, Peter. I probably take 2 or 3 phone calls a week from current clients that have a CD that's renewing at, 0.5%. And, where can we find something that's got some ability to, maintain the pace of inflation? So we always say that, no matter what the investment vehicle you're looking at is, there are 3 characteristics, and you can typically get 2 of those 3. There is safety, there is liquidity, and there is growth. So if you said, hey, I want something that's, that's safe. All right, well, how liquid do you want it? If you want liquidity, you're going to have to stick with those basic savings vehicles. If you want safety and growth, all right, well, you might have to give a little bit of access to the funds and let the fund or the company have the funds for a certain number of years, kind of like a CD, a 2 or 3 year CD. We've done a lot of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 year fixed annuities this year, which are competitive against like certificates of deposit. And, some of those are in that 2 to 3.2% range.
A little bit higher rate of interest and growth. Chris, we've talked about the way that savers and investors and retirees calculate the income that they are able to generate. And when you look at the more conservative side of the portfolio is now 1% or less, the cash flow that we can't anticipate in retirement has dropped as well and is more difficult to produce and sustain.
Absolutely. A yield on a 10-year treasury bond right now is about 1%. It's actually come up from where it was in March. But boy, you can't spend a lot of money earning 1% on it if you want to live off of interest. And, even the investment grade bond aspect of things has certainly, the yield has come down. Yield just means interest rates, the average interest rate. So if I was in an investment grade bond fund, I might get a yield or an average interest rate of all the bonds in that fund of 2.5% to 4%. So your yield might be 3%, for example. That's still not a lot of money. $1 million, that generates $30,000 of income. We've had a lot of companies that have curtailed dividends this year, to conserve cash. And, it looks like 2021 may get us closer to normal here with some vaccine news out of Pfizer and obviously Moderna here most recently.
Well, Chris, do you find that because of those low interest rates, savers, those who have been less tolerant of risk, are pushing themselves toward more and more risk and saying, we need to chase returns in the market when that may not be appropriate?
Well, yeah, I would certainly say that happens. And I think our job is to, highlight that risk that these folks are taking, and then to understand that, look, we can, our job is, wealth managers and retirement planners and investment advisors is to, explore the options that people have. And as as I get older, my life expectancy gets shorter. So from the insurance aspect, the life insurance companies, they know the law of large numbers. So they actually give us what are called mortality credits. So as we're factoring in income plans, the longer somebody's going to work, and let's say they retire at 65, well, hey, they can get more income from 65 to the end of their life than they could from 60 to 65 if they're going to look at, some form of pension plan, outside of the conventional mechanisms that you used to get from work, if you're going to buy your own income stream, for example.
Well, again, to take the stress out of retirement, much like taking the stress out of the holiday season, it benefits you to plan this carefully, to budget it, to understand your income and expenses and control them during this time. And if you would like help in that, this is one of the basic premises, the foundational pieces of planning for a more stable, secure, and confident retirement. And Chris McIntire is your resource to help and assist. Similar reviews can easily go upwards of $1,000 to $1,200, but Chris never charges for his time for these conversations. For that detailed planning review and strategy session, all you need to do is pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And in fact, Chris, those reviews, you go into many details, not just the budgeting process. That again is just kind of a basic foundational piece, but you're talking about the fees that people are paying on their money. Those can eat away at good returns. The risks that they are taking, we sort of addressed that may be at a level that somebody isn't really aware of completely, how much risk they truly are taking and how much they stand to lose if there is another market downturn. The income, the taxes, the Social Security, the insurance protections, all of that is part of that conversation there at McIntire Retirement Services.
Yeah, we're happy to kind of help people. I guess it's still football season, quarterback their retirement plan here. And, it's been a funny year here for all the sports leagues, of course, out there, but still there are captains of the teams. Somebody's got to be in charge to help drive the operation. We have CPAs that we help people make introductions with. We have estate planning attorneys, so understanding all these all these assets and all the facets of retirement planning that you can have, which are many. And, the more money you have, the more I don't want to use the word complications, but the more things you need to plan for, and the younger you are, longevity is your biggest risk. And just think of how many things can happen, good and bad, over the course of a 25 to a 35-year retirement that many people have nowadays. It's not, I retire at 62 and my life expectancy is 70, so you got to plan for about 8 years. Now life expectancy on a married couple is in the 90s.
Yeah, 30 years plus is pretty easy to do in retirement. Some people are retired for longer than they are in their working career, which means we need to have done a pretty reasonable job to aggressively save and grow and accumulate. Chris, another factor of planning during a pandemic, a lot of people's timelines have changed or shifted. Some folks were planning on working till 70 and now they're getting notice that, hey, the company doesn't necessarily need them to stick around, unfortunately. And they're looking at 60 to 62 as now a date where they are being forced into retirement. Or some folks have just reflected on the nature of life. I think you hinted on this at the beginning of the program and said, hey, my time is worth more than trading my time for money. And I'd like to accelerate my retirement plans and live a little bit and enjoy life. If our timeline has shifted, that is absolutely an indicator that it's time to do a planning review and detail out our new set of circumstances.
Well, absolutely, Peter. I could run through a list of folks that would take an early buyout right now for their retirement because they've got enough money and they simply don't want to pay, $2,000 a month for health insurance. My wife and I pay $1,650 a month for health insurance. So, most folks delay that retirement up there until 65 where they get on Medicare, and certainly drives the health insurance costs down. And, I certainly get that. And if you think about it, boy, if I could retire at 62 and somebody's going to bridge my health insurance piece to 65, think what you can do in 3 years if you're retired with the kids and the grandkids and all of those things. And it's that time value of not just money, but that time value of life. We don't get to come back and do this all over again. And, if you've ever had a health scare or anything in your family, you can understand exactly what we're talking about. Money isn't everything.
Yeah. During the Thanksgiving holiday, my wife's sister-in-law came over, and she's working on her doctorate in psychology, and her dissertation, she's got to do surveys for a number of people and write a paper, and it's basically on the management of and the balance of the work-life balance. And she asked me, is it important to be mindful of your work-life balance? And I asked her to clarify what exactly mindful meant, but I basically summarized and said, we work for money, and more importantly, we trade our time for money. So on the surface, it would seem as though money is more important than time. But in fact, it's quite the opposite, because what we attempt to do is trade only the time necessary at a high enough compensation level so that we can enjoy more of our time without having to work. And to me, that's work-life balance. And to your point, Chris, trying to bring this home, is that, as financial advisors, I know that money is an important thing, but it's not the most important thing. It's a tool to support what is important to us. And I think during this pandemic, maybe more and more people have come to realize that, if there's a silver lining to this.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's Americans are so fast paced typically, with just the way our lifestyle evolves and the economics of everything works, that, we've been able to slow down here a little bit. People have been buying campers and boats and things like that they do with family, instead of just jumping on airplanes and going all over the place. You and I have to travel a fair amount in a normal business cycle. And, I've got clients that travel significantly for business. And then when they get done retiring, they don't want to travel anymore. And some of the issues you can come up with there is, if you've had a spouse that took care of the home front in a situation like that, they want to go out and travel. I have many conversations with clients that, have not had the conversations with their spouse. What are we going to do? We're going to be spending a lot of time together that we haven't done in the past, in some cases 30 years. So, you really need to, work on the relationship side of everything as well. And, especially, if this pandemic's going to last, somewhat into 2021, we know that for sure, is, how does that impact you? I have conversations all the time with clients that say, Jim needs to go out and get another job. He's just driving me crazy being at home. We've never been around each other this much, even though they've been married for 40 years. So, some of these things evolve over time, and you need to understand, retirement's not just money. It's time, it's relationships, it's a planning process, and you have to do things differently than, I'm going into work punching a clock for 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, like you had been doing.
And the quality of life, the confidence in retirement, is not about the money, Chris. It's about the enjoyment of the time. And that's supported by a good, healthy, reliable income stream, which, again, with these low interest rates, with the higher risk in the market, is getting more and more difficult for retirees to have confidence in. And that's why the income planning process, that component of that review and strategy session, I think is so valuable for retirees and pre-retirees, because that's a different way of looking at planning. It's a different aspect of the planning that during our working career is not emphasized a whole lot, is not really taught to us as we are accumulating money.
Absolutely, Peter. And, and it's one thing for someone to come into the office and say, I think we're going to be okay, and then to leave after a few other visits, and we do an onboarding process with them to say, I know that we're going to be okay. We can't really use the word here on, guarantees and whatnot on the radio show because of the mass audience that's out there. But there are companies that you can do contractual guarantees with that have weathered world wars and so on, and economic catastrophes, that, you can hedge a number of the risks that you'll have. And longevity is the biggest one that you will have. The longer you have to live, the more chances in life that good things and not so good things can happen to you. And you need to hedge against the worst case scenario. And it's very, it's common everyday things. I'll give you an example, Peter, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
Of course. Have a 1 in 1,200 chance. The odds of your house burning down are 1 in 1,200. But everybody listening to this show that owns their own home, 99.999% have it insured for replacement cost or, similar value and all the goodies inside of it. Less than 5% of the people listening to the show have hedged their cost of spending $7,000 to $10,000 a month in a nursing home, where they can lose their house, they can lose their car and everything else. And they have done nothing about it because they don't think it's going to happen to them. Well, so does everybody else in the nursing home say the same thing, guys.
Well, I mean, our chances, Chris, of ending up in that nursing home are much greater, significantly higher than the chances of having the house fire or something that caused catastrophic damage of the home.
I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it's everybody else listening to the show, not the people that are that this hits home to. And, Peter, as you know, my wife and I care for somebody that's in a memory care unit, and it's about $8,000 a month. That's $96,000 a year. And what if you had to pull that money out of an IRA? That's 96,000 taxable dollars, and how fast can you burn through $500,000, with a cognitive issue? Pretty
well,
quick.
And just for a sobering statistic, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, but the Department of Health and Human Services says that about 70% of us, 69.8%, so as close to 7 out of 10 of us as you can get, will need some type of care during the course of our lifetime at some point in time, some type of extended care, nursing care, assisted care, in-home care, long-term care. 7 out of 10 of us, Chris, and we hope we're one of the lucky 3 out of 10, but chances are against us.
Peter, I'm right now going through underwriting on a policy to increase my long-term care piece, seeing what our friend went through. My wife and I do not have children, but I don't want to spend every last dime I spend accumulating in a care unit. I want to use somebody else's money for that, and I'll pay a premium to hedge that risk. And if I don't go in there, I'm going to leave a pile of money income tax free to somebody else. If you don't think that makes sense, you need to revisit it, guys. This isn't going away.
That's what planning is really all about. And a large part of that planning is being effective and efficient with our money, and where possible, Chris, where there are those opportunities in leveraging our money. And another aspect that you wanted to bring to the attention today in our discussions of planning during a pandemic, Chris, was the emergency account. And I know that this is not what you meant by emergency account. You were talking about that 3 to 6 months worth of cash that's sitting in the bank. Basically, to summarize your point, if I can put words into your mouth, is that it's not going to be very exciting. That's not its job. It's not going to grow. Its point is to be accessible. But to your recent statement there's another type of an emergency account there in that accessible pool of assets where you've leveraged those dollars that a lot of people do not have as part of their plan.
Absolutely, Peter. And, it's a missed opportunity in a lot of cases. And, it's something here this year as we've been, a little more homebound that we've been working on with the current client base here to say, hey guys, we've covered a lot of other things here. It's time to address this. And, let's run through the underwriting process. Let's see if we can get some protection over here. What's it cost to get that protection? Go through, see what it entails. What does it cost? And then accept it or not, because the plan you come up with is certainly going to be better than the plan that the government has as a fail-safe.
Sure. And I don't really think it's anybody's ideal plan. A lot of people talk about, well, Medicaid will be there, but I don't think it's anybody's idea of an ideal plan to be reliant on the government for support of our lifestyle and our health care. And I've actually heard absolute horror stories of what that looks like. So again, this is part of a careful planning process, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to look at all aspects of the plan. You've got to poke holes in it. You've got to see where there are stones that have been left unturned or issues that have been unaddressed. Chris McIntire's got a trained eye to spot and identify those. Pick up the phone, give him a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And this is a hectic time of year, lots of stress, lots of pressure. Easy to say we'll take care of something later, easy to procrastinate and put something off. That's not what you want to do with planning. And Chris does make his time available with no cost, no obligation. There's really no downside in getting this conversation started today. You can get a quick answer to a direct question over the phone, or set up a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting if merited. Take a look at one simple aspect, one angle, one account, or you can take a look at the comprehensive holistic planning. Chris McIntire willing to donate his time if you're willing to invest yours into your financial future. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, a lot of what we talked about, you had summarized in kind of the signs of a solid financial plan. We've covered a lot of ground today in planning during a pandemic. And just to summarize, I would say that yes, all of these issues become more important in planning during a pandemic. But as you also stated in your signs of a solid financial plan, a lot of these issues are going to be important no matter what conditions we're in.
Sure, we can call it a New Year's resolution or something like that. But what better time to get everything taken care of here than during the winter time in the middle of a pandemic where it's, not as safe outside as it's probably going to be as we get into 2021, because I'll tell you what, once they start vaccinating, hundreds of millions of people around the globe, we're going to want to get back out. I don't know about you. I'm going to want to go down to Florida, down to Naples.
Sure.
I love that area, but I'm going to step back to that long-term care piece real quick.
Okay.
Peter, you reminded me of something is, there are some proposals out there to eliminate student loan debt. Okay. Now, I don't want to pay for the college expenses of somebody who, who maybe made incorrect decisions or something. They decided to become a career student, for example. And why do I need to pay for that? And same thing, why do I need to pay for somebody with $500,000 to go into a nursing home?
Right.
As a taxpayer, I've spent my own money to leverage that risk. So if you don't want to pay for student loan debt, then why do you, some of these things we need to address as tax-paying citizens, and there are many more better ways on the private sector to do things than just go on the government handout. Nothing is free.
Well, again, Chris McIntire is here as your resource, ladies and gentlemen, making his time available to walk you through that planning process. Pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, just a few minutes left in the program. Let's go through some of these signs of a solid financial plan. Number one, you asked the question here, do you know your portfolio? And I think that the average investor, saver, participant in a 401k plan might understand that they have a 401k or have an IRA, but really understanding what the investments are within that might be a little ambiguous, a little murky, a little foggy. That is something that if we want to be confident in saying we do understand our plan and have a solid plan, we kind of need to understand the gears within the mechanism that are pushing it forward.
Certainly. Yeah. We don't go out there and buy a vehicle that's got bad tires. You typically want to have some good tires to support that. Or if you're going to build a house, you want that nice solid foundation. And, I think this pandemic this year has probably caused people to reflect back on the 2008 financial crisis and say, okay, here's, two crises and basically two decades, one after another. What's going to be the next one down the road here?
Well, look back even further. The dot-com bubble burst before that. So three, really, Chris.
Yeah. That's and the government spending all of this deficit money. So, government debt is probably going to could lead into the next, I'm not going to use the word crisis, but the next economic downturn, let's say. At some point, you just can't print money like it doesn't exist. And, because what happens is they print so much money out there and there's too many dollars chasing too few of goods, and that creates
Econ
inflation.
101, supply and demand.
Yep, absolutely.
And we've had Harry Dent on the program before. He's a Harvard economist. He's made a lot of predictions, but one of them had to do with demographics, saying that, hey, when the baby boomer generation stops demanding equities, in other words, stops investing into their 401k at such a high rate, that is going to put some downward pressure on prices in the market.
Absolutely. And, people ask me that all the time. I'm like, look, should we get out of the market right now? I'm like, it's hard to time the market, especially right around the election. We had some, a number of engineer type clients, that were, wanting to get defensive, and look what happened. The market had a fantastic run right there just before the election, and certainly just after it as well.
Well, the market's not always rational, Chris. And in fact, that's why we really need to have a long-term perspective and only take risk with what we are comfortable taking risk with, and clearly defining that. And I know that's part of your planning process. And again, ladies and gentlemen, it is easy to get started. There is no reason not to get started on this today. Before the turn of the calendar, many resolutions are made about jobs and family and quality of life, but the most common is financial. Don't wait until the day after the new year to try to make those resolutions. Get started to make progress so that you can fulfill those resolutions in 2021 and beyond. Do that today, right now, picking up the phone, giving Chris McIntire a call. He is Northwestern Ohio's resource for that planning, guidance, and perspective. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, always more information than there is time to get to it in the program, and time moves by so quick on the program, as it does in life, why we always encourage people not to procrastinate. But we appreciate your perspective and assistance in helping people get motivated about their plans and their financial future.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Hope everybody out there is taking time to be safe and sound out there, guys. This is got to get through the winter here. Looks like brighter days on the horizon. So stay safe, everybody.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.